So I'm just going to go through a few examples like these and show you how the NBA provides a playground for social scientists. Now we're going to talk about something a little bit more uplifting. So to shift gears here, we're going to talk about inequity aversion. What is meant by inequity aversion is this basic idea that people dislike inequity or injustice, even when it benefits them. People don't like injustice. This is a good thing. So in games where a person is given $10 and are told you can split this money you can give $0 to $10 to another person, people often, more often than you would think, will split this amount 50-50. People like fairness and they dislike unfairness. And this seems to be deep-seated not only in our species, but there's some evidence of inequity aversion in dogs and monkeys as well. I think the best example of inequity aversion, besides the one from basketball that I'm going to show you, comes from a recent study by Harvard's own Mike Norton, where Mike Norton and Dan Ariely asked about 5,000 people about wealth distribution in the US. And what you see at the top, this is the actual wealth distribution in the US. This is how wealth is actually distributed. So people in the top 20% of earners have over 80% of all the money in the US. What they did was they asked 5,000 people from different demographics, people who earn less than 50K a year, more than 100K, men, women, Democrats, Republicans, to estimate what the actual wealth distribution was. And you see that they're close, but not really. They're about 20% off here. Now, where this gets interesting is they also asked these people what their ideal wealth distribution was in the US. And what you see is that whether you have people earning more than 100K a year, less than 50K a year, Bush voters, John Kerry voters, men and women, people say their ideal wealth distribution is actually somewhat equal, far more equal than what we would expect. So I think this is an example of how people actually like fairness. Now, I'm going to show you an example of this in the NBA, where some clever folks at Cornell decided to investigate this in the context of unjust foul calls. So if you watch the NBA, you'll notice that every night there's a few calls that are just bad. And the question these folks had is, do the players that benefit from these bad calls, do they actually dislike being the beneficiaries of unjust calls? And how might this manifest? This might manifest in actually missing the free throw after a bad foul call is called. In the NBA, this is sort of known as the ball don't lie phenomenon, developed by the esteemed Rasheed Wallace, who suggests that when there's a bad foul call, the ball don't lie. It will somehow avert the hoop, but I'll show you an example of this and then we'll get to the data. So what you're going to see here, let me see if I can put the pointer here on Antoine Jameson has the ball. He's going to get just nudged by the smaller Rodney Stuckey. That's not really a great foul call. Stuckey is going to protest. You're going to see, he's a much smaller player. You're going to see the replay. This is sort of a really wimpy call. It's not a great call. And so now Antoine Jameson gets to be the beneficiary of this bad call. He's going to shoot a free throw. And this example is nice. He misses the free throw. Unfortunately, you can't hear it, but Antonio McDyess actually says the ball don't lie here. Now, the question is this a real phenomenon, and do players actually miss more after an unjust call? So what these folks at Cornell did is that they randomly selected 102 games from the 2007-2008 season, watched all these games, had a bunch of people watch these games, identified 77 obviously incorrect calls, and then they looked at what happens after these incorrect calls, on the first free throw after the unjust calls. And what you see here, this is the average free throw percentage across the NBA. This is the average percentage for the players that they actually identified receiving the bad foul calls. And what happens here is after a bad call, their shooting percentage drops from about, I can't tell, somewhere between 70 and 80% to less than 60%. This is a significant drop, suggesting that perhaps subconsciously, maybe consciously, players who benefit from these unjust calls don't like it. It's somehow averse, and they therefore miss the free throw afterwards. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about one more phenomenon with another very jargony name. This is the idea of meritocratic differentiation, and I'll give you a simpler term for this, which is hierarchy. Now, people normally don't like hierarchy. I just told you about how people are averse to inequity. They don't like people being at the bottom and being at the top. But it turns out when hierarchy is based on merit, this meritocratic differentiation, hierarchy can be good. And it can be good because it can promote cooperation and coordination in an organization. You know who's on the top, you know who's in the middle, you know who's below, and this can sort of facilitate the flow of things in an organization and lead to organizational success. Now, this is just a theory, but some folks at Northwestern wanted to test this in a context that really relies on cooperation and interdependence in the NBA. And specifically, what they tested was the idea that meritocratic differentiation, as indexed by the dispersion of salary over a team, I'll show you what that means in a minute, boosts cooperation, therefore boosting winning. Now, let's just pick this apart a little bit. So, what salary dispersion is it's the extent to which player salaries are dispersed over basketball teams. So on the left, you see each bar here represents the player, and the x-axis here is the number of millions of dollars that each player is earning. So for the Lakers team here, you see you have Kobe Bryant, who's earning close to $25 million this year. You have Theo Ratliff at the bottom, earning about $1.3 million this year. And this is a pretty good spread. You see a lot of salary dispersion. So there's sort of a clear hierarchy based on merit here. On the other hand, you have the Los Angeles Clippers, where the top earner, Chris Kaman, is making about $12 million. The bottom earner, some guy I don't even know, is making about $0.5 million a year. And there's less salary dispersion here. And without getting into the nasty statistics of it all, these folks at Northwestern analyzed this dispersion over a number of years. And what they showed in a model is that this pay dispersion, as an index of meritocratic differentiation, measured by the standard deviation of salary, so Kobe Bryant versus Theo Ratliff, predicted greater cooperation, and cooperation was measured in terms of assists, passing the ball to a player for a made shot, field goal percentage, which is taking a good shot versus being a ball hog, defensive rebounds, showing effort for your team on the defensive end. And both of these factors, cooperation and this differentiation, predicted organizational success in terms of winning percentage. For all you stat nerds out there, cooperation mediated the effect of meritocratic differentiation on organizational success. And furthermore, this was specific to this sort of cooperation amongst teams. So variables such as free throw percentage, which don't really index cooperation per se, they just sort of benefit the player, boosting his stats, were unaffected by this pay dispersion and did not affect winning. So what have we learned today? We're going to wrap up here. Then I'll take some questions. One, implicit bias is pervasive, even in the NBA, in this high-stakes environment. So cross-racial fouls are more likely to occur than same-race fouls. Inequity aversion, players miss free throws after unjust foul calls. And meritocratic differentiation is a good thing. Teams with greater salary dispersion win more. And I just want to leave you with an image of the best basketball NBA nerd of all time. This is not the guy who ordered a Narragansett behind you at Zuzu's last weekend. This is Kurt Rambis, and he's my favorite basketball nerd. So, in closing, thank you very much. I hope you all watch more NBA games.